the big ideas that we hope you take away with you today from these seminars is the power of partnerships. There's an old saying that tells us if we want to go fast, go alone. If we want to go far, we go together. And here at BGW, we believe in the power of going together. We believe in the power of partnering with professionals, with experts that can help you get as a church from where you're at to where God is calling you to go. And as we've said many times in these seminars, there is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all cookie-cutter model for your church. God has called you uniquely to be his expression in your community. And we want to make sure that in every journey we go on with a church, that we treat that church like the beautiful expression, unique and beautiful that they are. And because of that, we have set up a process that really gives you a front row seat into understanding and discerning which of our partners that we have would be the best fit for you, your church, to engage in. I want to share with you a little bit about that process, maybe introduce you to some of our strategic partners, and hopefully invite you into a very relational process of connection and discerning together next steps for you and your ministry as you move forward, chasing bravely the call and the mission of Jesus for your life and for your church. All of this begins for us with what we call a 30-minute story call. You know, a lot of times you'll talk to companies and consultants in the church world that will spend a lot of times telling you about themselves. We want to start by flipping that script and understanding who you are. What is God doing in the unique expression of your church? We want to understand in that story call your leadership, your passion. How long have you been at your church? What are some of the unique challenges that you're facing? And where do you feel as a leader that God is calling you to lead your congregation? After that story call, we're actually going to share your story as we write it down with our stable of experts. We want to introduce them to you, to your mission, to you as a leader and what God is doing in your community. Along with that story introduction, we are also going to put together a pretty robust demographic study for your community, your building, your neighborhood, where God has called you to be. That's going to be a report that's made available to you and to your team free of charge, but it's also a report that's going to help inform our team to best discern how we can serve you and help you move forward. From there, we're going to follow back up. Sit down. Connect on Zoom, which we've all become terribly familiar with in 2020. And we're going to talk about next steps. We're going to talk about the partners we feel like are best to introduce you to, and together, along with your staff, your elders, your leadership team, really the team of your choosing, begin to lay out a step-by-step strategic path forward for you to pursue. Man, I think there's power in understanding next steps, especially for those of us who are visionary leaders. I know for me, sometimes it's so easy for me to see the dream God's put in my heart for 10 years from now, but I don't know how to carry that out on a Monday morning. And as we all know, when it comes to mission and vision and dreaming about who and where God is calling us to be and to go, we have got to take step one before we can ever take step two. We have got to seize a Monday before we can ever see a 10-year vision come unto fruition. And so that strategy is a big part of what we want to help you with in this process of examining your facilities, examining how you're worshiping and who you're reaching, and maybe even who you're not reaching and not touching in your community. We want to walk with you as God turns the lights on around you and you begin to see a clear path forward illuminated by His Spirit and His Word. As we lay out that strategic plan, and our hopes are that there are going to become a few of our strategic partners that just rise to the surface. We've got strategic partners in the Patterson Center that through a StratOps process work with hundreds of churches every year to help lay out a detailed strategic plan that understands the history of the church, that understands the failures and the successes that are behind you, and with all of that in view, lays out a clear path forward that is measurable, attainable, but most importantly, God-sized in its scope. We also have for-profit partners that oftentimes can come in and help churches dream a business dream. One of the best models that we have had the privilege of working on many times as a company at BGW is the partnership between a preschool and childcare center with a church that's in the middle of a building project. It is a great crossover that we see not only creates economic engines for churches to be able to dream bigger and afford more, but also creates people flow into your building, 100 to 150 families, Monday through Friday, every morning dropping off their kids, giving you an opportunity to love extravagantly and preach the gospel without ever using words. See, we want to connect you with the pieces that maybe fill in the gaps that you just didn't know how to fill up until that time. We have got world-class partners when it comes to capital campaigns and fundraising, understanding that fundraising has changed drastically over the last 10 years. You know as well as I do that those of us who experience capital campaigns maybe early on in our ministry know that most of what we learned in those capital campaigns we can just crumble up and throw out because the playing field has changed all around us. And we want to make sure we're equipping you with the right people, with the right experts, with the right fit inside of your ministry, a team that can equip you to overcome some of the substantial hurdles that stand in front of you. See, ultimately, our hopes and our dreams are to make our friends, our partners, our relationships that as a company nationally we have been building now for decades, and to make those relationships accessible to you, where you can stand with confidence and know that you have friends that are working for you in the lending world, which I know for many of us as pastors, that's one of the most scary things for us to dream about and think about. How do we responsibly talk about taking on debt? How much can we afford? And how much would a bank even lend us? Man, we have a team that does this every day, specifically works with churches in navigating some of those very important questions moving forward. You see, our hopes as a company is not just to be a team of world-class architects and builders, which BGW is. But ultimately, we want to meet you in the middle of your ministry, understanding that the pace at which church moves is different than any other organization in the world. Knowing that so many of the projects that we start talking about today maybe have a 5-year ramp leading up to them. And we want you to know that pastor to pastor, we understand that. We understand your timeline. We understand that sometimes you just have to stop and take significant time to cast vision and to get early adopters on board and to create that big vision and dream in order to rally your community around you. The last thing that we want to do is make you feel like as a pastor and a church leader that you're going to get sucked into a process that's just going to carry you away, maybe even kicking and screaming. When I was a kid growing up in the 80s, we had these books that were called Choose Your Own Adventure. You'd read a little bit of a story and then you had a choice. You could go left or you could go right. You could go up or you could go down and really write your own story in the process. And our hopes are, as we find the opportunity to introduce you to our stable of experts, as we have the opportunity to sit down and to hear your story pastor to pastor, as we find the privilege to hear where you're struggling, to hear maybe where you're doubting, to hear areas that you need help, you need care, and you need strength in your own life, that we can see God begin to lay out in front of you that choose your own adventure path. The last thing in the world that we would ever want to do is just to charge ahead in building a new building, leaving a church that is weaker in the process behind. And so we want you to be introduced to a team of trusted advisors, relationships that you can engage in, men and women that are not only proficient in their expertise, but are lovers of the church and of Jesus Christ, that are committing to pray for you, to pray for your ministry, and to stand in the gap with you. We want to surround you with the team that, quite honestly, none of us as local church pastors day in and day out would ever have the time or the bandwidth or the reach to surround ourselves with on our own. So my invitation to you, Pastor, we would love to set up an opportunity. You're going to see a link in the video here below that you can follow. Schedule a story call and start a conversation with no strings attached. Let's start to turn some lights on around you when it comes to finances, when it comes to lending, when it comes to some strategic barriers that you see in front of you, when it comes to the demographics of maybe a community that's changing around you faster than you feel like you can keep up with. And know this, and we are in it with you for the long haul. We are excited to stand with you and see this adventure that God writes for you and your church moving forward. BGW has been such a valuable partner for us at the Genesis Project and something that we love called the Genesis Fund. BGW is passionate about planting churches in dark places. And we have a fund that is set up to do just that, to invest in communities that maybe don't make a whole lot of sense to invest in from the outside looking in. To take the expertise and the breadth and the width that is all around us in the kingdom of God and to stand together in order to see the Great Commission fulfilled in our world, in our time, and in our generation. And I think that is maybe the most exciting thing about a partnership that you and your church can have with BGW. Is again, it's so much more than just an architectural and building firm, but it gives you the opportunity as a church to engage in missions around the world. It gives you an opportunity to engage with church planters and visionary leaders that are doing hard things in amazing ways. It gives you the opportunity to know that you have trusted advisors who are experts in their field, ready to circle the wagons around you in your ministry and to forge ahead together. So we can't wait to talk to you. We can't wait to hear your story, and we can't wait to see the next steps that God is laying out in front of you.